Okay, welcome to Where the Climate Things Are. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me,
Um,
friend.
this is so fun. I've been so excited about this.
Yeah, me too.
I have many questions for you, but I'm going to start with just the simple one that I ask everyone. Actually, not so simple because I think it's quite hard to do an introduction, but
Mm,
would you introduce yourself in whatever way feels good to you today?
yeah. Who am I today? I'm Jon
Mm,
Jon Moore Palacios. I'm a writer, big brother. Um, yeah, that's pretty much the summary.
yeah.
I'm right now. I'm doing a few things. I work full time at Rewiring America, which is a really big electrification nonprofit in the U.S. We're basically helping Americans rethink how to power their homes, and in the process, save a bunch of money and get a bunch of emissions out of the air and get a bunch of gas appliances out of our homes. Um, and I'm also the founding director of Black and Climate, which is a pretty like grassroots on the ground, a few people getting in a room together effort, um, trying to get really good research together on what Black folks who work in climate, environment, and sustainability are experiencing right now,
Hmm.
but also trying to like situate ourselves. So it's not just. I try to think of it. What my hope for it is, it's more than like an ERG. It's really like or an employee resource group or like just like an identity group.
Hmm.
It's really trying to get folks to think about the climate work we're doing in our respective orgs and companies and what have you from the perspective of being Black in climate in a few ways, like being a
Hmm.
Black person who works in climate, being a Black person who is weathering climate change,
Hmm.
and thinking from the perspective of Black people globally who are and have experienced climate catastrophe in the present and in the past. And then the third definition is strategies. Like, what
Hmm.
does it mean to approach climate change thinking from the position of Blackness, thinking Blackly about the situation?
Hmm.
And a lot of that just comes from like my own upbringing and education and like Black studies and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So yeah, doing a bunch of things.
that's so cool.
Of course, I mean, we met through Footprints. So I've been on the board of Footprints for almost a year now, I think.
Oh,
Is when
nice. That's
I
right.
jumped into Dakota's DMs, literally having no idea who he was.
Yeah, I love that part of the
It's just
story.
been so fun
It's
meeting
so
people who are
good.
like, "Oh my God, Dakota Jones!" I
I
was like,
know.
"This is just a
You're like,
random white
who is
man. Like,
this
I
guy?
don't know what's going on." Truly
Oh my
ridiculous.
God, I love
We'll
it.
talk about that later when
Yeah, we'll get into
we're
that.
at
We'll
Jazz
get
High,
into
yeah.
that.
But he's the best, and that work's been like super rewarding and super surprising. I mean, we'll get into it when we
Hmm.
talk about like why climate and stuff, but I did not think that I would be doing this work even 2 years ago. It didn't make sense to me,
Hmm. Hmm.
and so yeah, I'm happy to go wherever you want from there.
I love it all. This is perfect. Sets us up great for all the different threads we want to follow. I I love that though, like thinking even back to a couple years ago, like the realization of like I didn't think I would be doing this work, or like I never
Hmm.
saw, like I don't know if
Yeah.
from what you just said, even like working on something or at something with something like Footprints, like
Hmm.
could you have seen that happening? It's always so
Yeah.
surprising to, especially in climate, I feel like the space is evolving so fast. The
Hmm.
conversation is rapidly shifting even as we speak with our current administration, and it's kind of
Yeah.
like, okay, there's need to jump in different ways than
Hmm.
me, either of us maybe knew
Yeah.
a couple years back. But I do, yeah, okay, so we'll get into all of that. The question I ask everyone that comes on the podcast is, what was your aha moment on
Hmm.
climate? And I think
Hmm.
that's specifically interesting in the context of what you just said.
Yeah.
Like that, I'm really curious to hear like what
Hmm.
that is for you, and almost
Hmm.
also when, if you remember, like is that something that was
Hmm.
recent or was it kind of a while back?
Yeah. This is a good question because so for me, I feel like it was very stop and starty. Um, I think thinking about, just to speak really abstractly, I think thinking about climate was always interesting to me because it was so big
Mm-hmm.
and it had both sides to it. It had this really complex technical science side that I couldn't relate to because I can't count. And then it had this very like humanistic,
Yeah.
liberal, artsy, political understanding. So I was like, I don't know how I'm
And
going
you
to
were
get
like,
into
yes.
that. Yeah, I was like, but probably that one. I probably won't be in a lab like testing earth samples, you know. So that was sort of the earliest thoughts I remember having when I was really young, well, really young, you know, like 10 years ago, when I
Hmm.
was going to college. I was like, yeah, this is probably something we should all be thinking about, but I wasn't thinking about it at all. And then,
Hmm.
um, long story short, I started going to grad school. I went to PhD school for African American Studies. I ended up leaving at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. Um, but in
You were in a
the
P wait, you were in a PhD program
program,
and
mhm,
then you left in the beginning of the pandemic. Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah,
Okay.
yep.
Cool.
So
Yeah.
I went to UC Berkeley, and then mastered out. So I got my master's, and then
Got it.
the pandemic
Mastered out.
began. Yeah,
What
isn't
a
it like
verb. Or like a whoa.
yeah.
I'm sorry,
It's
I've
really a
mastered
very
out.
yeah. It's like a sexy way of saying I left.
It is sexy
You
though.
know, it's
When you
like
but like, hey, I'll just be like, oh, John
yeah.
John, yeah, he mastered out.
He
Yeah,
mastered
it's
out.
fine.
It sounds
It's
like I'm
fine.
like an avatar and I like ascended to the highest realm of my abilities. It's like no, I signed a form and I
And you
like
were like, peace. I'm
yeah.
done.
Well, because I could see the mountain from the moment. I was like, I know they're gonna ask me to come back and teach sick students in a sick classroom. I was already
Okay.
frustrated with the benefits. I was already frustrated. I mean, the context of me leaving grad school was UC Berkeley. There was a failed wildcat strike. So basically, like there was about to
Hmm.
be one of the biggest unauthorized strikes at a university ever. And then the
Okay.
week we were getting ready to launch it, California entered lockdown.
March
And it actually hasn't
2020.
recovered. Yeah, like
Wow.
it's actually really wild how it happened. And so we were really close to. I think the wildcat strike movement was really close to, at least in California, getting real, like getting benefits from the UC that grad students could actually live off of.
Hmm.
California is so fucking expensive, but when that failed, I think we all were like, "Oh shit!" I mean, especially a lot of us who like were first gen or like
Yeah,
didn't have money or like really relied on our grad student
definitely.
money. We were like, "Oh, we don't know what the fuck this pandemic is. Even if it lasts a week, there's no way that on the other side of this we're going to be in a better bartering position." And it's actually gotten much worse. I mean, um, you know, considering the clampdown that's happening at universities, uh, this all this paranoia around losing federal money.
Yeah.
You know, they're putting clauses in offer letters like, "Hey, we can change your offer at any time." Which to me, like, I would have never gone to grad school if someone
No.
told me
Yeah.
that.
Totally.
So
That's wild that that's
it's going to
happening right now.
transform. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
grad programs are already like pretty overrepresented with like white folks and middle class and wealthy folks,
Definitely.
and it's only
Definitely.
going to get more
Yeah.
wild.
It's who can access it, who can afford to
Yeah,
be there in that uncertainty too.
in
Like
that
to have that
uncertainty.
pulled at any
Yeah,
time, it's like, okay, I'll go, you know, or
yeah,
whatever. I can find a job or I can
yeah.
not and rely on what I have or
Correct.
whatever. Yeah, that's interesting.
And
Wow.
you know, I was 20, 19. I was like 23 or 24 when I started, which
Hmm.
is still pretty young for grad school. But I remember looking around one day and I realized like, oh, I'm the only single person in my cohort. And at first I was just mad because I was like, why am
Oh.
I the only single one? But then the more I thought about it, I was like, wait, that's
You're like,
why I'm
hold
actually
up.
struggling a bit because you all have
Yeah.
a second income.
Yeah.
You have
Oh
someone
yeah.
to cook you chicken and rice. Like
Mm-hmm.
you have someone to rub
Mm-hmm.
your fucking feet. This is
Yep.
hard. This is hard to do
Yeah.
by
Support you
yourself,
through
you
this.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
In all
it's
ways. Yeah, that's
yeah, in
so
all ways.
interesting.
In all
Huh.
ways. So so yeah, I went to UC Berkeley and then but so when I was in grad school, that was because I wanted to be a professor. That was the first time that I
Mm.
started reading about climate and most of it was through the lens of Black study and thinking about histories of colonization and enslavement and anti-Blackness. And I think the simplest way to answer this question is probably a few texts. Like there's this article by a Black philosopher named Axel Carrera, and it's called. I might get one of the words wrong, but I think it's called
Mm-hmm.
"The Pitfalls of Anthropocene Ethics." Well, Blackness and the Pitfalls of
Okay.
Anthropocene Ethics. And to summarize it in like a sentence, she's basically like, so Anthropocene is this idea that like we've entered a geological era that's like defined by human beings' impact on the environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have all these people who are fighting over like where's the gold spike, like what geological feature proves it, or like how long does it have to happen before we say it? And you have all these professional organizations like the American Geological Society, like beating each other's asses, and it's quite dramatic, which is silly because anyone with eyes or ears or a nose or touch or mind or anyone who's been on the earth in the past 300 years could probably say in their mind, that sounds
Yeah.
right. Like,
Yeah.
that sounds right.
Yeah.
Basically, she's arguing, like, there are real ethical questions we have to figure out before we start to talk. Like, there are a lot of assumptions that we make about our shared universal desire to like save this planet, and that's not a universal shared desire at all. And the idea that like we want to save the entire planet for all of its people, that's actually a niche belief.
Yeah.
Um, and especially if you're polling the people in power, if you're polling the people responsible for fucking up our air and our water, uh, that's not a belief they hold at all. It's actually incompatible with their profiteering and their
Mm.
politics, and But specifically, she thinks about blackness and just like the histories of enslavement and colonization and anti-blackness that sort of allowed for the regimes that make the planet uninhabitable. And if you're not, and it is true, right? Like if we're not fundamentally altering our relationship with those forms of control and domination, uh, those regimes persist. I mean, we see that right
Mm-hmm.
now. I mean, I think
Yeah.
I've been kind of spooked by like how many people in my circles who are in the environmental movement, who are thinking about climate, are like, oh shit, like they're gonna sell the lands, and it's like, do you know what America does? Yeah, it makes money by stealing things and selling it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's an
Yeah.
extractive economy.
It's
Um,
been that way
it's
for,
been that way. Like
yeah.
what you experienced was a break. It
Yeah.
was a
Right.
vacation,
Yeah.
and it came with certain benefits, and I think that's actually interesting for folks to think about because they miss those benefits. They want those benefits. They want to run on the
Yeah.
trails. They want to, but it's
Mm-hmm.
also like, yeah, but maybe maybe another way to put it is like if the primary problem with selling off public land is that you don't get to run on them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yep.
kind of what Axel, it's kind of like, well, you're kind of not getting deep enough. And you're actually leaving all this shit on the table for people to, when they do get in power, to play in your face with. So
Hmm.
that was a really important essay for me. Um, yeah. And I think the more I thought about it, the more, and I think the more I researched and understood, one, I think I came into a deeper understanding of like, because I'm a poet,
Mm-hmm.
and I think like reading like Black environmental poetry, reading
Hmm.
Black poets who like, because I come from a city, I come from Detroit. I never
Yeah.
thought of myself as a nature girly. So that I think was also really important, just like reading texts from Black people in the US and in the diaspora who were thinking about what their relationship to land was. And then eventually a lot of them start thinking about, well, then what is my relationship, not just to the land that I'm on, but the sort of shared land that we're on. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think just reading,
Yeah.
reading, and then finding Black folks who were in the space that I actually fucked with, and I appreciated their politics and I appreciated their writing. And while there's always contradictions in the work that we do, I'm just looking for honesty. I
Yeah.
don't need a perfect person. I don't need a perfect partner. I don't need but I need honesty, and
Yeah.
I feel like that's sort of what's been leading me in the directions that I'm going so far.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Wow. And I know that you've even mentioned on like calls we've been on with Footprints, which we'll get into too, but just the I don't know if it's dishonesty, but you mentioned sort of like watching what's going on right now with people, some people around you feeling like there's no acknowledgement of what's happening,
Yeah.
or almost sort of
Yeah.
this like
Yeah.
pretending it's not happening, which I'm experiencing too, almost in
Hmm.
like different
Hmm.
settings that we
Yeah.
occupy. And so it's yeah, that I appreciate that. I appreciate the honesty or the ability just to say, like, let's talk about it. Let's face this
Yeah.
head on. Let's have those
Yeah.
hard conversations. And I know that's, you know, easier said than
Yeah.
done for a lot of people, but at the same time, like, it's so important, because if we're not talking about what this actually is, or if we're not
Hmm.
like unpacking it in ways that can get to the core of like what you just said about, it's not about like, oh, you can't run on trails anymore, like that's so sad. It's like so much deeper than,
Yeah.
you know, what America's history is, or what, like, what's going on now is like not a
Yeah.
surprise for a lot of people in this country, I feel like.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's
Yeah.
very interesting. Yeah.
Hmm. And
You
to
yeah.
the running on trail thing, like I think sometimes when people hear that, they're like, "But you got to reach people where they are,"
Yeah.
and I'm like, "But where they are isn't where I need them to be."
To be. Yeah, this is interesting.
So you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like I'm not
Yeah.
saying I'm like you know like and I feel like Dakota and I have talked about this with footprint stuff. Like part
Yeah.
of why you know where Dakota and Nate were coming from when they founded Footprints was we're focused on trail runners because there's this implicit or really explicit understanding that they care about trails because they take advantage of trails as athletes. They use
Right.
trails. It's
Yeah.
important to their sport. And that's not wrong. That makes sense to
Mm-mm.
me. Yeah, like you
Sure.
start where someone's interested. But if it stops there,
Yeah,
then
if
they're
that's
saving
it.
trails for
Yeah.
themselves, right? Which isn't
Yeah.
I don't think that was ever entirely the case with footprints, but I do think that it's easy
That's
to
interesting.
because the critical thinking is hard. And honestly, some people will check out. Once you
Yeah.
start connecting the dots, some people will be like, I'm gonna go run, bitch. Like once you start talking about
Totally.
stolen land, people are like, well,
Oh,
you
it's
know,
my
like
time to go.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
But it's like, well, then you
Yeah.
know,
Interesting.
can we be what are we here for? Like our you
Mm-hmm.
know, like the work has stakes, and it doesn't mean that you have to throw people in head first and fucking hold them
Sure.
under the water,
Sure.
but it does mean that you have to be honest with them about where we're going. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but I hear you on the like the denial, the kind of implicit denial that's floating in the
Yeah.
air right now.
Yeah. That's
If
what
you're
freaks
not
me out.
talking to people about it, if you're not,
Yeah.
I've just had to like talk with friends about it and like find people I trust to talk about it because I do think over time you do feel gaslit. It makes you feel like
Yes.
you're the one being dramatic or your reaction is not proportional to what's
Uh-huh.
happening. Um, Man, it's silly. It's just not
Yeah.
worth it. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, talking it out is so interesting. The meet
Mm-hmm.
people where they're at thing, I saw something the other day. It was actually a speaker we had in the Climate Strides event in New York,
Mm.
Adam Met, who's from Planet Reimagined, and writing a book, and et cetera. And he did like he just said something that was interesting, because I always say, like, let's meet people where they're at, like, be right, like, not force anything, but just like
Yeah.
find common ground. That's kind of what I mean when I say that. But you both have like opened my eyes to this in the last week of and like today now, it's sort of this he said something like, meeting people where they're at, he's like, I need them to be 5 steps ahead of where they're at.
Yeah.
So how do I like meet them 5 steps ahead, or like bring them to that point together, kind of thing? He's like, how do I like work to get them ahead? So, and it's just a framing thing, but it was really interesting to me, because it was like a mini aha moment for myself of like, okay, because to your point, the danger is that we stay there. Like if we meet people where they're at, then that's where we stay. And that's kind of the whole, like, I loved the just like addition of forward progress piece. And like, and you said this well, like there like that, like Adam's framing was maybe more of the like positive, or, oh, we got to like move forward. But it's like, to your point, like, let's look at it a different way. There are stakes here. If we don't move forward, like that's high stakes. You know what I mean? Like we have a lot to lose if we don't move forward. So I've been like really appreciative of the reframe in the last
Mm,
few days of like,
yeah.
huh, maybe I'm gonna say it differently now, or
Hmm.
because I think it's not just about. I mean, you're such a wonderful example of this. Like, it's not just about what we say and how we frame it, but that is very, very important. Like, there's actions
Hmm.
behind it. There's the
Hmm.
doing. There's the movement. But like, if we don't frame it up, at least for, I don't know. I'm very
Yeah.
visual. I'm very like, I'm in my head a lot, for better for worse. But there's like, if there's frames that don't meet what like the intention is, or even then the
Hmm.
action, like it doesn't work. I don't know. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that. That's really interesting. I say that all the
Yeah.
time. I probably say that at
Yeah.
footprints. Meet people where
No,
they're at.
but it's not. It's totally like, I think, conditional, right? Because like a lot of my day to day work is like thinking about consumer marketing things, how to get people to
Mm,
see electrification in a certain light, how to drive action, how to get
yeah.
people to press buttons and install machines. And that to me is a different order of imagination
Hmm.
than getting people to you, someone I don't you don't need to know what decolonial means to install a heat
Hmm.
pump.
Hmm. Yeah.
All you need to know to install a heat pump is who to call to install
Yep.
it and how much money it's going to save you.
Yep.
And you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so like
Hmm.
I also like, but a lot of times, yeah, like you said, like when we talk about like meeting people where they are, it's like, well, who are you in relation to them? If you are like a
Yeah.
service provider, you probably can meet them exactly where they are, and they'll probably love you for it, and you'll never have to see them again because you did a good thing and they did a good thing, and we're all
Sure.
better for it. But if you're
Sure.
talking about like, I don't know, like you've seen these crazy like online, like not dating shows, but these like YouTube series where they find like the worst people you've ever met and they put
Yes.
them in a room. I'm like, this is hell. They're meeting each other in hell. They are meeting each other where they're
They're
at. They're both in hell.
yeah.
And it's yeah, it's
Mm,
yeah. So I think it's like,
that's interesting.
yeah, yeah.
No, no, I love this. We could like, yeah, that's a really good example, actually. I mean, okay, so well, this leads me to we've touched on like a few of the pieces I was curious about asking of like your journey into, the aha moment was illuminating into like your background.
Yeah,
You're a writer, you're a communicator. So
yeah,
how did the shift? Because you said even like I didn't see myself doing this work 2 years ago, even
yeah.
like what? How did that shift
Hmm.
come to
Yeah.
be to
Mm.
rewiring? And like, was that sort of what I'm curious about? And this is even just like as your friend, I'm like always been curious to ask you this. Like, was the job at rewiring like sort of the way you sort of stepped into this space, or was it
Hmm.
a realization beforehand of like I want to go find a role in
Hmm.
this space? Like, I mean, it's maybe like
Hmm.
more of a nitty gritty question, but I'm so
No.
interested in your thought process of
Yeah.
because all the other thing is rewiring America is to me that's emerged because they started right like in the pandemic
Yeah, they did.
2020, so it was
Hmm.
something that was newer, and I've kind of watched
Hmm.
the growth and the like trajectory, and
Yeah.
it's been unbelievable to see what y'all have
Yeah.
accomplished already. But I was curious
Yeah.
like what
Hmm.
as a writer, as a academic, I guess you could
Yeah.
say, who mastered out. I'm always going to say that now. This is so good. I'm curious what your journey was like there.
Mm. Yeah. So yeah, when I say I made the decision to leave grad school, but I also feel like it was partly made for me, like
Yeah.
it felt so untenable. And so me and a friend who was also in grad school, we moved to Chicago in the middle of
Oh,
the in the beginning of the pandemic because we wanted to be close to our family in Detroit without being in Detroit because we didn't know what was going on. So
yeah.
we stayed there for a year, and then during that time, um, I started working as a speechwriter because I had done an
Ah, right.
internship basically with a speechwriting firm when I was in college. I hit them up, I got a job, applied for a job, got the job, left grad school. My friend ended up doing the same later on. Um, and it was a miracle, I think, that I even started speechwriting because grad school, I think, and I remember talking to Bree at Footprints about this. Grad school can really, especially for folks who do not come from like four generations of academics, it can
Mm-hmm.
really hoodwink you into thinking that that is all you can do, that
Mm-hmm.
there's like some big scary world outside of your campus doors and you're completely unqualified for it. And I really did think that.
Yeah.
I thought that people who worked 9 to 5 jobs had some kind of like Superman, they were bit by a
Mm-hmm.
spider. Like I really, it was
Yeah.
so illogical. And then once you get out, you're like, oh, they do that to you so that they can pay you 7 acorns a day and like,
Yeah.
completely exploit you. Because
Yeah.
if you think you are incapable, that's what happens. But
Exactly. They
once
want
I
you to
left,
think
I was
that
like,
almost.
yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Once I left, I was like, I can do shit. It's a
Yeah.
job. I
Hell
can
yeah.
do things.
Yeah.
And so I think I just started to slowly get interested in climate. One, because I mean, this was this the beginning of the Biden administration, and
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah.
there was a lot of money going into climate tech. There was a
Mm-hmm.
lot of like public-private partnership stuff happening, but there were also just like people I respected who were talking about climate.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go see what this is about.
Yeah.
And then I got into climate based. I started doing climate based, the climate based
Oh,
fellowship.
yeah. Okay, cool.
hmm
Yep.
But then because climate based has a pretty rigorous job board, I actually got my job at Rewiring like the first week of the fellowship. So I ended up
Oh,
doing climate
hell
Vine
yeah.
after this because I was like, I
Okay.
wasn't there at all. I was just getting
Yeah.
onboarded to my job, but met a lot
Huh.
of cool people in both programs. A lot of whom I still talk to today. A lot of Black folks that I met in the
Mm-hmm.
space through those. Yeah, and that's sort of how I landed at Rewiring.
That's so cool. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's interesting context too, given like what was going on in what was in politics at the time. Because I remember what
yeah,
was that, November 2020 when he got elected,
yeah.
and that was kind of the pandemic was already almost,
hmm
well, I don't know, it felt like multiple years in at that point, even though I guess we
Yeah,
weren't a full year in.
yeah.
What is just because you hinted at this, and just for people that don't know,
hmm
like in we can go into this as much as you want, but like Rewiring America, it's an electrification nonprofit, like does a ton of advocacy and education. I mean, like what is your role with the organization? Like,
hmm
and you mentioned this a little bit, but I am curious, like
Yeah,
what your day to day is. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so we're a pretty big team. Like you said, we started in the pandemic, so we've always been remote.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so there's no like central office or anything. Um, yeah, so I mostly work on like I'd say two pieces, a lot of product communication stuff, and then a lot of more like general content strategy stuff. So uh, right now we have sort of two online journeys for folks. We have
Mm-hmm.
rewiringamerica.org, which is sort of where folks who are trying to plug into the electrification movement are going to go to join a CEO coalition or to find folks in their
Hmm.
community to canvas with or to become an electric coach and help people in their community electrify.
That's cool.
And then we have homes.rewiringamerica.org, which is a more consumer centric,
Okay.
I want to swap this machine out. I want to do this upgrade. Walk me through the process. Um, so yeah, it's mostly been a lot of research, a lot of writing, a lot of building better tools with folks to help people navigate the journey.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a really electrification isn't new, right? Like one of the things that I think we're always informally talking about, and I mean, I'm sure you've heard this too, working in climate is like it's one of these solutions that we've had for like a long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Electricity isn't new,
Sure.
but but a lot of the technology is, but also like um, our understanding of what it means to run our world on fossil fuel. Some of
Mm-hmm.
that is new, like what
That
it
is,
means
yeah.
to cook with gas, what it means for the health of your family, what it means for your health,
Yeah.
what it means to drive a gas powered car, what that has done to our planet, what that does to our health, just what combustible fuel means socially and politically, I
Yeah.
think has changed a lot. And so I think that's where a lot of the opportunity is because, like we were saying earlier, it's not necessarily there are all sorts of reasons people would go electric.
Yeah.
Um, we're sort of we have to just figure out a way to capitalize on all of those reasons.
Right.
whether it's you care about the climate, or you want to save money, or your home is kind of drafty, or you want to
Mm-hmm.
have grid independence, or you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
there's
so
actually
many
it's a
reasons.
huge, yeah, which has been
Hmm.
fun because I think that like it does. I like building user journeys. I like writing to the audience and getting in the mind of someone. And I think that it, unlike some of the work that I've done in the past, where I felt like I was completely removing myself from the equation because
Hmm.
I was so misaligned. Um, a lot of the writing work here at Rewiring feels, it really just feels like I'm sitting next to someone, helping them figure
Mm-hmm.
something out. I
Huh.
don't feel like I'm
Yeah.
talking at people. At least it shouldn't feel
Yeah.
that way. And I
Yeah.
really like that kind of writing. Like I feel, I mean, this is something I discovered through Footprints as well. But like,
Hmm.
whether it's my big brother energy, I don't know. I like being a coach. I like guiding
Yeah.
someone through a process. I like
Yeah.
being a supportive uh, fixture. Um, and honestly, the more that we're going to take a therapy detour, but I think a lot of this just
Do
has to
it.
do with like, that's what I wanted as a kid. I really
Yeah.
lacked that. I mean, even when I use that example of I like sitting next to someone, like working through something,
Mm-hmm.
I'm someone who applied to college by themselves. I'm someone who did the FAFSA by
Yeah.
themselves. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
and that can feel so intimidating and overwhelming when you're embarking on something where the stakes are high and you don't have support, you
Yeah.
know? And
Yeah.
so this role really is nice because it feels like I'm able to not downplay the stakes. The stakes are high. Bills are fucking going up.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
Totally.
climate
It's
is
real.
is changing. People want to feel safe and comfortable in their
Mm-hmm.
home. Those are really high stakes. We don't have to
Yeah.
downplay them,
Right.
but we can make them less intimidating and overwhelming by giving people the resources and tools they need to make it through the journey.
Totally.
So yeah, I really enjoyed that element to it, and it's allowed me just to
Yeah.
connect with a lot of folks in the space who are thinking, who are working through similar problems. So most of it isn't like complicating something, which is something I did in
Mm-hmm.
previous roles, like complicating really complex technical stuff in a digestible way. This is more like having real conversations with people in the language
Hmm.
that they understand. Uh, yeah.
I love that. That's super cool. I think the like big brother, big sister energy.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that too. You know that I have that as well. Where I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
let
Mm-hmm.
me sit with you and like guide you through this. I love that. I
That's
did
rewarding.
bring I did bring my I didn't choose to wear it because I was like, I don't want to pop a hat on.
Yeah.
But
I would have
this
found it.
is this is the heat pumps. What is it? Quilt. This is the company. Quilt
Yes, I have
is,
the same hat. I got it last
dude.
SF Climate Week.
I wore it at Footprints a ton, I feel
Yeah,
like. And
yeah.
but the thing that's so funny is that I wore this in, you'll appreciate this. I wore this in Maine, where I'm from,
Hmm.
and my aunt literally was like, I don't get it. She was like, "What? I don't get heat pumps? Like, why do you have that on a hat?" And I was like, "Well, it's it's," she's like, "Yeah, I have a heat pump. Like, I've had a heat pump for years." So
Oh,
the
that's so
point was,
funny.
it's actually not, it wasn't like, it wasn't what I thought she was saying, was sort of like, why
Yes,
would, I mean,
yes, yes.
she's, very involved in like
Yeah,
canvassing in Maine. She's like very involved in volunteering for all the different causes and campaigns, super environmental, like very much like, but she was sort of like, yeah, I don't get it. Like, what's the big deal
yeah.
about heat pumps? And I'm like, you and your community in Maine is already there. Like, don't worry, it's
Yeah,
fine. Like, you've
yeah.
probably been, I was like, you probably had a heat pump for years. She's like, years, So
Yeah.
it was kind of interesting.
No.
You got this at SF Climate Week last year?
Yep.
That's so,
Hmm.
dude, I have a shirt. I have the shirt, the heat pump
Oh
shirt
shit.
too. I mean, the logo is
It looks
so
good. It's
cool.
cute. It's very
It's a
cute.
cool
Yeah.
logo. I love it.
Yeah. No, they're doing
Okay.
they're doing really cool stuff. Yeah, I like. They're
Quilt's
like
awesome.
well, they're going to the natural extreme, which is like this should be aesthetic. This should be
Yes.
almost cultural. And I
Yeah,
fuck with it. I think it's super smart.
totally.
Yeah.
I think so too.
Okay.
I mean, especially from like a branding communication
Yeah.
mindset. The fact that like this is literally my favorite hat. Like I wear it all the
Yeah.
time, and I forget what's on it. It's like you just like the aesthetic, the design, right? And then people do the like, why heat pumps? And you're like, oh, let me tell you about them.
Yeah.
And it's not in the way my aunt was saying, where she was like, yeah, I've had that for years. Why are you? Okay, wait. So we've mentioned footprints a few times. At this point in your journey into Rewiring America, that space, you're like in it, you're vibing, you're loving it, and then you somehow reach out to this man named Dakota Jones. Like,
Yes.
how did this happen? This is just story time at this point. I'm just asking you like various points of your life, but very curious. I feel like I've kind of heard this story in multiple pieces, but I actually don't know if we've ever because I think Dakota was like, yeah, and then like Jon Jon reached out and it was like a godsend. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's like so grateful. But I'm also like, where were you at in your life, in your journey?
Yeah.
And like, how did you even find out about footprints in the first place?
Yeah. So I have a coworker who went to a running camp at Craftsbury. And when she was there, I think it was like the women's running camp that they do. Cool. And I think she had just been researching like what other kind of running things happen at Craftsbury. And so
how can I come back?
Yeah.
How can I be back at Craftsbury?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And she discovered footprints. And one day we were just talking about running camps and she mentioned it to me. And I think she encouraged me to either apply as a camper or a mentor or both. I don't know. But she was just like, they seem cool. Like you should, if you want to go to Craftsbury, it was really pretty. You should hit them up. And so then I went on the website, and this was right after, I forget what number camp it was, but this was right after Footprints had basically like suspended the camp for a bit.
Yes.
So I have my coworker being like, oh my God, these people are so cool. You should go check them out. And then I get on the website and the homepage is like, we are so sorry. And I was like, what the fuck is going on in this fucking community? I was like, I literally just got here and these people are apologizing.
This is so funny.
I was frustrated because I was like, well, I want to go to a running camp.
Yeah, you're like, what?
And I wanted to go to Craftsbury, and now these people are telling me like,
I got all excited.
You know, like yeah.
Oh my gosh. This is too funny.
The lower grade desire that had been bubbling, and it was really almost purely, I would say it was 80% just careerist and like ambition driven. Was like, I want to be on a board. I was like, I'm bored. I want to be on a board.
Ooh, I want to put that on a shirt. I'm bored. I want to be on board. Let's make a shirt. We'll make it in the heat pumps font too. Like, you know,
just board. Just the website is boardforboard.org.
.org. I love it. Yes. Yep. Great.
That was where I was at. Right. I was like, I'm bored. I want to be on a board. These white ass runners are. I don't know what they're doing, but apparently it's bad.
But they're apologizing. For some
shit that they did in fucking Vermont.
Some shit went down.
Oh
my God, this is so funny.
I sent an email to, I think I sent in the like request or the contact form, but I think it went to Dakota and I was just like, hey, I truly have no idea what's going on, but I think I could maybe help. Because from my perspective,
oh my gosh.
I mean, I didn't know anything about these people, but I was like, and then once I had more context, because from the outside, I was like, these people could be monsters. I have no idea.
Sure.
But once I got context, I was like, oh, I think this is just a young nonprofit navigating what it means to create community for folks. And like, and that's hard no matter what, but it's especially hard when the demographics are tilted and it's a mostly white space and you have good intentions, but your implementation isn't there yet. And you're also trying to figure out this dance of like, how do I bring people in without objectifying them and turning them into tools.
Yeah.
And we really got that out in the first conversation. I feel like Dakota has many things. He's pretty forthcoming. I mean, like he's an honest person. Like he's very gentle in that way. And I think I'm also just kind of disarming. I think that because again, I wanted to go to camp. So I was like, look, buddy.
You were like, how do I get to Vermont?
Yeah. What do we need to do? And then when I realized, you know, that really this was just a problem of like not thinking through the camper experience enough, and also just some of the, to put it plainly, like some of the intellectual and emotional deficits that just come
Yeah.
with being a white person growing
Being
up in a
white.
very white place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
was like, girl, we can get through this.
We can get through this.
We can
Which
get through
is
this.
not to say
Yeah.
that I know, just to really quickly add this, like I'm like laughing with you and all this stuff. I know there was real harm caused in the
Yeah.
first camp, and I just have to like,
Yeah.
and I know you do, I know you know that too.
Yeah.
And I'm like, just
Yeah.
for folks that don't know, I had Dakota on. I launched with Dakota on this episode, on this
Mm.
podcast, and
Mm.
like we talked about that. And so I just
Yeah.
like, it's like yes, those are things. I'm so glad you reached out and we're like, we can get through this. But like,
Yeah.
I do know, just to validate those folks that went through what they went through.
Yes.
It was like
No.
it was like
100%.
a lot.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think like, I mean, like Footprints was like maybe not going to be a thing. I mean, like
Yeah.
Dakota credits you. Dakota does really credit you with like bringing it back to life because of all the work that you put in. So anyways, we'll keep with the story, but I just had to like interject
Yeah.
with the thing that I know you like, both of us know this of like, yeah, there was a lot of shit that happened.
Yeah.
And I think that
Yeah.
like, but like what an amazing opportunity I think that you saw, or like the hopefulness, like there's like, you were like, it sounds like
Yeah.
you were like, we can get through this. We can get through the framing
Yeah.
and the guidelines that we need to put in
Yeah.
place to make it a safe
Yeah.
space.
Because it was
Yeah.
a cool idea to me, you know?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, so what you're telling me is you have this really great idea and the implementation failed, not for malice, not for disregard entirely, but more so just because you weren't ready to do the thing you thought you were ready to do, and people got hurt in the process.
Yeah.
And I think something that, yeah, the whole like, you know, shit or get off the pot kind of thing, I think that's really strong in me, especially when I work with white people. I'm like,
Yeah.
do the thing or shut up.
Yeah.
End it or do it right.
Yeah.
But
Right now.
waxing poetic in this in between where you're like, oh, it's like we're all dying. We only have so much time left. Like, what are we gonna fucking do together? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is not to discredit harm, but it's like if we had a moment of silence for every time a white person did something racist, our whole life would be a moment of silence. Like, we have to. We all have to act through the complete dysfunction that is the way that we're relating to each other. And that's the tea. I'm like, to put it very bluntly, it's like, you know, white folks who grew up in white environments, like a lot of American trail runners do, it's like, you actually don't, you don't, you're quite familiar with being racist. You're not familiar with being racist and aware. And that can demobilize you in such a way that makes you completely useless to everyone around you, including white people. So for me, looking on the outside, I'm just like, girl, get it together or go away. You can go away too. And like, no one will be looking for you on the trails. Run your trails, do your races, no one will be looking for you. But if you're going to take up the space, if you're going to ask for money, if you're going to bring in non-white people, if you're going to bring in poor people, if you're going to talk about accessibility and diversifying the sport and all this shit, then let's do that. And every day might feel like the most difficult day. Oh no. Like that just might be what this is. And you don't have to choose it. You don't have to choose it. But if you do choose it, like choose it with that knowing that you're doing a hard thing. And I think what most folks find is like, they're not the only one trying to do a hard thing. And when you're honest about doing a hard thing, that attracts certain people to you. And that's really how I felt about the camp. I was like, I really saw that in action, like the way that I feel like the way that we as mentors work together to just create an experience for folks that was able to hold the difficulty of what we're trying to do,
Well, and props. No, dude, I love it. I'm so happy. Like, I have so much I want to say on this, and I know we're like I want to ask you more questions before we wrap, but like, I so appreciate this because, as you know, I've like chosen to try to step into conversations that are recorded about,
Yeah.
being a white person in a space, or being a white person in a homogenous space, trying to welcome folks in who
Yeah.
don't look like me. And I'm supposed to be like, hey, like, how do I help? Like originally I was like, how can I help? And then I was like, no, no, no.
Mm,
It's just about listening. I got to sit back and
mm,
listen. And then
mm.
also bring in more white folks to like have hard conversations with them if that's
Yeah.
my role. Like the role that
Mm,
I saw for myself in that conversation has shifted. But like,
mm,
to your, I mean, you created a curriculum that like I tell people are like, oh, did you do footprints? And like, oh, it's climate 101, right? Like, what'd you guys talk about? And I'm like, nope, we talked about reciprocity. We talked about
mm,
privilege and representation, and we talked about equity and justice. What is climate justice? What is accessibility in climate? Like,
mhm.
there's so many, and the values I think that are now reflected in the footprints, mission, ethos, vision is like, I think, yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, more to say on that, but I'll leave it at like, you did really transform what the camp now is. And I think the experience we had together, I like truly do. I say this with no like irony or exaggeration. Like I truly feel like that week we created, I feel like a family was created. I feel familial with you guys, which I think is
Yeah.
like something that might seem like, sure, I'm outgoing, I like to connect with people, but like that's a different level for me. And
Yeah.
I know you saw
Yeah.
that happen in me and others. I saw that happen in others. Like it was quite transformational. And I think I know it was not the experience that, again, I know it was not the experience they had the year before. So it's like,
Yeah.
I think like and yeah, Dakota to
Yeah.
this day does credit you with that. And I'm so excited to see where the camp goes from here because, and not just the camp, I know y'all want to do more like
Yeah.
events or connection points. Um,
Yeah.
so, and this like, it's like a horrible segue, or not a horrible segue, but like I'm like running through these questions because we're gonna run out of time. But like I did want to ask you about this. What there was this event that you just participated in, which was a fundraiser for Footprints, right? It was
Yes.
Jackpot
Yes. Yeah.
Ultras. Is that what
Mm-hmm.
it's called? Like Jackpot was okay. And I know
Yep.
Dakota was going for the like 100-mile record casual, which is
Mm-hmm.
just something
Mm-hmm.
that's so funny to
You
explain to like
know.
other people in my life. I'm just like,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
ridiculous.
it's like 100 miles, but it's like fast on a road maybe, and like he might like break himself. We don't know.
Yeah.
But you ran your first marathon, is that
I
right?
did.
Like,
I
I
did.
feel
Yeah.
like in all of this, like, yeah, like talk to me a little about your like journey as a runner, if that's even
Yeah.
what the way to call it. Like, how have you? I don't know, because what I also really appreciated too about Footprints was I thought it was going to be way more like every morning there's a run and you have to
Mm-hmm.
do it and
Mm-hmm.
it's like really
Mm-hmm.
intense. And
Yeah.
we did
Yeah.
do that, but there was
Yeah.
also like a beautiful hiking option or a walking option or a
Mm-hmm.
paddling option. I'm paddling multiple mornings. I was like, I'm like kind of injured, gonna give my knee a rest. Like, let's
Mm.
do a paddle. And so
Yeah.
for you, like from camp, I know that like you were always kind of like, I'm kind of a runner, kind of not, or I don't want to put
Mm.
words in your mouth, but
Yeah.
how did you, and then I just hear like, oh, and Jon ran his first marathon. So I
Yeah.
was like, what? Amazing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm a real believer. I mean, as we talked about with the I'm bored, I want to be on a board thing. I think that like
We need
I've
that on a shirt.
I'm I give a lot. Like when I give to something, I give a lot, and I have become more comfortable with taking in return, like with being open to receiving in return, and not just exhausting myself. And so I think what that's meant with Footprints is like, ironically, like part of what I and Dakota deserves credit for this too, because I think I kind of came in and was like, this shouldn't just be for runners, and that was
Yeah.
For someone who like running is such a part of their identity in life. I think that I don't know if I would have been amenable to it the way that Dakota was. So I think
Mm-hmm.
it takes a lot to zoom out of yourself to see what might
Mm.
be the best for a group of people you're bringing together, which is like big ups to him. But the irony of all of this is I came in and was like, should be outdoor enthusiasts, and like runner is too
Yeah.
niche and you're not going to get the diverse group of people you want. only for me to be like, can you teach me how to run? You know,
Yeah,
which has really become what it is. But you know,
totally.
I was like, I want to become a better runner. And so, yeah, like when Dakota told me that he was going to run Jackpot as a fundraiser, one, he had the idea of like doing it as like having a relay, and so we ended up
Mm-hmm.
doing a relay. So we had some former mentors and campers come out and join us. Um, and I kind of was just, yeah, possessed by the spirit of like, well, I never done a marathon before, and so I was just like, well, what better time to do it than when I'm surrounded by people who I do feel like I'm in, community and family with, like,
Yeah.
because that was one of my
Hmm.
big anxieties was building it up into this solo thing that I have to do by myself, and if I fail, it's my fault, and if I succeed, it's my fault, and it didn't feel like that
Yeah.
at Jackpot. One, Jackpot's just kind of a festival, so it's just fun. You're just happy to be
Yeah.
there, but also just nice. I was like, oh, I have a crew now. All of a sudden, like
Yeah. Totally.
I feel supported in a way that is hard to experience, especially as someone who isn't like I didn't grow up in trail running. I don't know what it means to crew for someone. I don't that way of
Hmm.
navigating being outside and being in movement is still pretty foreign to me. And so, it was I appreciated it because I was like, well, this can be for me.
Yeah.
There's nothing about this that isn't for me. I can be supported by people.
Yeah.
I can run
Yeah.
for 6 hours, and I can do the same for others. Yeah, so it's been really, I mean, liberating sounds cliche, but it's true.
Yeah.
It's it has been very liberating. And I guess my only advice to people is like who are coming into climate or similar organizations is like to not be afraid to take that for yourself. Like,
Yeah.
I'm from Detroit. I didn't grow up running because you couldn't run. There's
Mm.
nowhere to run, right? Like where the
Yeah.
you see someone running, you're worried. You know what I mean? Like this
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
not a
Yep.
fucking state
Yeah.
park. And so I think for a
Right.
while, you don't really, at least for me, I'll speak for me, like I did not realize how effective that kind of conditioning had been to
Mm-hmm.
think that there's something, not to say that there isn't something dangerous about running in certain parts of this country, because there absolutely are, but
Sure.
to
Yeah.
think that my body in motion was
Hmm.
inherently endangering myself.
Oh.
Um, if you had asked me if I believed that was true, I'd be like, no, that's silly. But I really do think that I internalized that.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so, and it's hard to, I think,
Wow.
break out of that by yourself, which is why I
Yeah.
like the work that like Laura is doing with Tierra Libre is so cool because it's like, I truly
So
do think
cool.
that some of this work of
Yeah.
feeling like my body can be in motion in this place. And it's not because I have an ancestral right to this land. And it's not because I pay taxes. And it's not because of blah, 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 blah. It's just because I can and I'm doing it and I
Yeah.
want to do it. But I think that alone is hard by yourself. So yeah,
Totally. Totally.
yeah,
Yeah, I feel that, and I'm so happy that the group setting was like
yeah.
was a positive thing. Okay, small aside, I'm gonna get kicked out of where I'm in 4 minutes.
Mm,
So
mm-hmm,
I have to figure out. I wanted to ask you both more about Black and climate
mm-hmm,
and like your favorite climate solution. Those might be the same thing. I don't
mm.
know, but I think I'm gonna. I don't want to. I don't want to put any ideas in your head. But I think I'm just gonna, because you talked about Black and climate. I would love to ask, like, okay, so you talked a little bit about Black and climate at the beginning, but like, where
Mm-hmm,
do you want to take this? Like, do you have, I don't know,
mm-hmm,
like, what's next for this idea? Because you launched this year or this
mm-hmm,
winter. I don't know. I think
mm-hmm.
of years in circles. So,
Yeah.
recently, you, you've brought. It's really cool, actually. I feel like a kinship of like launching something since Footprints. Actually, maybe you launched it before. I don't know, but like, you know what I
A
mean.
little bit before, but
I
pretty
feel
much,
like
yeah.
we've both kind of like put these things out into the world, so that's been really fun to like to see side by side. But curious, just where you want to go with it. What's next for Black and Climate?
Hmm. I mean, the cop out answer is like whatever's next for Black people. in climate. I don't know.
That's not a cop out answer. I like
know,
it. I like it.
I know. But I think that feels true to me. I think
Yeah.
practically what it will mean is continuing to do events during the large climate weeks in the United States. But I think a priority for this year is to release our census, which is like the first time we're going to have open access data on the experiences of Black folks who work in the space. Setting ourselves up to do the census again this year and have more folks participate. And then getting funding. So much of this work, the money piece, but also the time piece is, you know, we all have 9 to 5. We're all trying to like do passion projects while also trying to feed back into the loop. And I'm like, the funding piece needs to be completely independent of us. We need to be using some rich person's funding for this. There are too many polluters in the world for me buying bagels to make sense.
No,
that's crazy. So, like Shell,
which is in reference to your breakfast, right? Like, you're hosting your breakfast? Okay, it's like, that's amazing. That's so good.
Don't feel bad, everyone. Please eat the bagels. I am not going into debt. Please eat the bagels. But you know, it's like, hey, someone else can buy these fucking bagels. You know,
definitely yes. Yeah,
that's a big priority. Which pairs nicely with like, you know, continuing to support DJ and Footprints and growing the camp experience this year. It's just really like navigating these. I know the fucking word of the day is unprecedented. Everyone's it's unprecedented, and it is. Like, it absolutely is unprecedented. But what I've just been joking with people is I'm like, for as unprecedented as we say these times are, it's giving precedented. Like, our responses are giving precedented. We're not really doing anything differently.
So good. Yeah.
And so I'm like, if we need unprecedented problems, totally hear you. I love that. We need some unprecedented solutions, because if I see one goddamn change.org petition, I'm going to shoot myself. Put the petitions down, girl. Put them down.
Yeah. We're doing something. We got to do something different.
We got to do something else. And so I'm trying to keep that energy with the Black and climate stuff. Like, rather than just being like, okay, it's time to turn into a 501c3 and it's time to report. I'm like, nah, maybe not. Maybe we need to keep this diffused and dispersed and like maybe more responsive to folks' needs. And that feels good.
I love that. I love that.
So we shall see.
I'm so excited. Well, Black and Climate is showing up a couple places at SF Climate Week. You're going to be at Climate Strides, which is our next event that we just did, the one in New York City. So can't wait to see you there. Thank you, Jon Jon, so much for joining. This was really delightful, and I love talking to you. So thank you.
Same here. Thank you, friend.